At the Via Organica Research Farm in north central Mexico, and we're looking at 25 acres that we're about to plant 2,000 agave plants in each, well, 1,000 an acre, and we're going to plant 125 mesquite trees transplanted in between the agaves. So this is a typical area where we've grown corn and beans and squash in the past, but it's very difficult to grow with the changing climate and the fact that we don't have a well here. 86% of Mexican farmers do not have wells. According to the government, 90% of small farms are not economically viable. So we're introducing this system of native plants of agave and these mesquite trees that are native, or huisache, and we're going to produce a whole lot of food for animals, and we're going to produce with the mesquite food for humans as well. And one of the things that we use in those white bags there, that's biochar, or biocarbon in Spanish. It's a form of charcoal that makes an excellent additive to agricultural soils. When you mix a bit of the biochar in with the compost and you put it on the soil, you increase the water retention up to 70%. You also help produce more soil fertility. So that's one of the amendments we use. We have also compost that we make here that has high levels of fungi, mycorrhizal fungi, that we're going to be putting in with the agaves as we start to plant them this week. We've been waiting for the rainy season, which is supposed to start tomorrow. Basically, in this part of Mexico, you have a 4-month rainy season, and then it doesn't rain at all for 8 months. This week we're going to start planting thousands and thousands of agaves in this area, and we're preparing the trees for grafting that we're going to plant next March. This is there are 140 varieties of agaves growing across the world. 20% of the world's landscapes have one or more varieties of this plant growing. This is one of the larger ones. This is called a maguey pulqueta, and the great thing about these plants is they suck down a lot of carbon from the atmosphere to produce this enormous amount of biomass. These plants are probably only 5 years old here. What farmers discovered is that if you chop this up really finely with a machine, well, first you cut the lower branches, the pruning, but you chop them up in this machine. It looks like green coleslaw when it comes out. And the key then is we put them in these buckets, and we get the oxygen out, stamp that, and we ferment these in an anaerobic environment for 30 days. At the end of 30 days, these chopped up agave leaves turn into a highly nutritious, healthy animal feed, which animals love. It's sort of like how humans have rediscovered fermented foods. Well, farmers have rediscovered in this area the value of fermented foods for animals. So I'll show you a little later the machinery that these farmers invented that we use to chop these up. But this is the key. In the state of Jalisco in Mexico, there's 500 million agaves, but they're not this type agave. They're called what's called blue agave. The problem is the way they're grown as a monocrop for tequila is not the way to benefit the environment, not the way to sequester carbon. They don't use the pencas for animal feed. The way we're doing it here in a regenerative manner is good for the climate, good for the soil, good for the animals, good for the small farmers who can no longer afford alfalfa or hay for their animals, especially in the dry season. So if you imagine a forest of these, we'll take a little view here shortly higher up where we can see the whole valley. But this is how we're going to green the desert. These plants don't need any irrigation. Uh, they put out little babies, uelos they're called. Here's one right here uh, underneath this branch. The mother plant puts out these babies. You dig up these babies. There's another one, and you replant those. And so very shortly you can have thousands and thousands growing. And they pull the moisture from the air. They don't need irrigation. You don't water them. They literally, when nighttime comes, they have little openings or stomata in the bottom part of their leaves, so their pancas. These open up at sunset and they take in the moisture from the air. And then during the daylight hours, these stomata close up so that it's a very efficient plant for using water. It's 26 times more efficient than alfalfa in using water. And yet once you ferment it, it is an incredibly nutritious and inexpensive animal feed. We can make fodder or fermented fodder from these leaves for less than 5 cents for 2.2 pounds or a kilo. Here we are at the entrance of the Via Organica, which means the organic way agroecology park. And it says Rancho Via Organica, Via Regenerativa and Orgánico de Mexico. This is a organic and regenerative farm. We have 75 acres here, or 30 hectares, and we grow lots of different organic vegetables, herbs, fruits. We also raise animals. We have chickens, ducks, turkey. But typically we'll have several school buses every day. We have young agronomists or ag students from all over Mexico and all over the world come here. We have groups come here for ecosystem restoration. We have room to sleep about 40 people here, and we have conferences where people, even larger conferences where people have camped out. And this is it's basically a farm, school, and research center. And there's a number of these across Mexico that we have an alliance with. We also have a organic food store right there. We have an organic restaurant here, and these are some of our shade houses where we grow organic vegetables. All of our buildings are natural adobe. We don't have a well because we wanted to have a situation like, as I pointed out, 86% of Mexican farmers do not have wells and irrigation, nor are they going to get them. So we capture the water off of the roofs of all of our buildings. You see those gutters, so in the rainy season when the rain comes down, falls on the roof, the tile roof, it collects in those. It goes down into the darker brown part under these adobe cabins or the cisterns. So we store 250,000 gallons of water here at all times, and we have these ponds that capture the water during the rainy season as it flows off the mountains and the hills, and we've got the ability to store 3 million gallons of water here. And so we also utilize techniques that use less water. The agaves need no water, and most of the trees we plant, you only have to water them the first year or two in the dry season a bit. So this is Via Organica, and this is an inspiration to lots of people now in Mexico and across the world. We've been going for about 10 years, and everything we do, we're trying to serve as an example of techniques. The adobe buildings, the water catchment, we have dry composting toilets. We recycle the water in our showers, and we really try to set an inspiring example especially for Mexican youth and rural people who typically are having a rough time economically. So we say that we're sembrando esperanza. We're planting hope as much as we're planting organic food and raising animals holistically. The other thing that's happened with this land over all these years is not only have we lost the trees and the biomass and the above ground carbon stored in the trees, but we've also lost the carbon and organic matter in the soil. And so this soil, which used to have anywhere from 4 to 8% soil organic matter, ours, a lot of it's down to 3 now or even lower. And so our challenge is, how are we going to green this desert without irrigation? How are we going to turn, these millions of acres in Mexico and these, really it's several billion acres around the world that look just like this. How are we going to make them productive again? And what we have discovered here, thank goodness to the ingenuity of Mexican farmers, is a desert, semi-arid, arid desert agroforestry system where if we plant the native trees or we plant agaves where there are already native trees, if you see in the distance there, that's a perfect area where we could plant probably 100,000, 200,000 agaves in between those trees, and that'll be a perfect system. We can produce enough animal feed from the agave plant on 2.5 acres. We can feed 40 sheep for 5 months and not have to buy alfalfa, not have to worry about the health of the animals eating things that don't have much nutrition in them, like corn stalks or whatever, dried grass. And we can relieve some of the pressure on the land. We can graze the animals, in an intelligent way, not overgrazing, not undergrazing, if we have a supplemental feed to feed them. And the supplemental feed, which I've talked about, is the agave leaf and the mesquite pods. And we are embarking on a really exciting project here. See, we're using a special kind of plow here. It's called a keyline plow. And the difference with this plow is that it cuts a narrow but deep trench in the soil. So this is great for not disturbing the soil, not exposing the soil carbon to oxidize, but also it helps the rain, when it comes, infiltrate into the soil. And so this model, we can put liquid compost tea in this. We can be seeding, put the seeds in here that will go right down in where the trenches are. And this is a very good tractor to have. So this is good where we're planting the maguey and transplanting trees. We make rows that go with the contour of the land, where the water flow, you want to slow down the water and get it into the topsoil. We want to use every bit of that water. So this is a excellent tool, keyline plow, invented in Australia. These are the 5-gallon buckets that we use to ferment the agave. The idea is that we chop up the agave in a machine that I'll show you over here, and then we uh, put it half full, and we press down. We just use 2x4s to get the oxygen out. Then we put the rest of it in there. We seal it up. We mark the dates. After 30 days, it's fermented, and it's turned what was a very hard to digest, indigestible fodder into something that the animals love. So again, we have natural adobe buildings here. What's good about these buildings is that they're cool in the hot weather and they're warm in the winter. And they're just made out of mud and straw and animal manure. And we make the bricks ourselves here. This is where we're still fermenting this batch. The rest of it's ready to go. We're making two kinds of fodder or forraje from the agave. One is just the straight agave, and the other is a mixture of the agave with the mesquite pods, the bean pods off the mesquite tree, mixed in. And that gives it more protein. This is fine for sheep and goats, and our pigs are eating 25% of their diet is this, our chickens. We make various kinds of compost. One of them is the lombre compost, or the worm casing compost. This is really valuable when we're transplanting the agaves or the mesquite trees. We always make sure we've got a high quality compost, combining some of these other piles of the agaves that I showed you. We prune them just with machetes, and then you basically hook this machine, which was invented by these Mexican farmers in the region. You push the pincas in through here. You've got this machine is connected to your tractor, so it's the machine of the tractor that this is hooked to that drives this, that drives the blade, that cuts this, and then it comes out looking like green coleslaw in here. I'll show you some of the 30,000 Hijuelos, or baby agaves, that we're going to be planting this week. These are the, I showed you earlier, the Hijuelos, which are like the children of the mother plant that grow up from the base. And so what you do is you dig up the Hijuelos. They don't have very deep roots, and then you clean the roots a little bit. We're going to dip these in an organic inoculation liquid water, and an organic substance that keeps the plant healthy and will help it grow faster. And so you could see over the lifetime of a plant, they'll have anywhere from 5 to 20 of these babies, and it's good for them to remove the shoots and replant them. And so you'll end up with the entire countryside will be planted like this. And so basically this reforestation process. And the thing is, small farmers can't wait for 5 or 7 years for trees to grow up to where they can get some value from them. They need to get value right away. And the nice thing with agave is you can start these, we will be able to start pruning them um, next year. Uh, and then they'll grow bigger and bigger and bigger. So there'll be an immediate reward for the small farmers. And the point that really impresses the small farmers is when they see animals eating this agave. That shows them, because they can't afford to buy animal feed anymore. Their crops are failing. They've got livestock, but they can't afford to feed them. And this is the perfect answer. And it's a native product. This is a native tree, the mesquite, which grows in large parts of the world, including the Texas, the western U.S. But it's an integral part of this system here, because if you plant the agaves next to these trees or interspersed in these trees, this fixes nitrogen and other nutrients into the soil that the agave pull out. So you can have a permanent continuous system. In addition, as I just pointed out, these pods are highly nutritious. A couple of months a year they come out, and if you prune the branch from these pods and put them through that machine that I talked about over there, you can end up with a powder, a flour, that we then mix in with the agave, and it produces a much higher protein level. This is filled with protein. It's humans eat these too, and they're tasty, and the animals love them. So this is the combination, the mesquite agave agroforestry system, planted on millions of acres in Mexico, is going to be able to reverse climate change and eliminate most rural poverty at the same time by producing a high value, low cost animal feed or variety.